And I'm Brianna Keeler live in Lviv, Ukraine. And we do begin with some breaking news on the war. Leaders around the globe are taking unprecedented action to isolate Russia. The United Nations General Assembly will be voting here soon on suspending Russia from the UN Human Rights Council as more evidence of their atrocities in Ukraine come to light. And in Washington, the Senate voting to end normal trade relations with Russia, and they move to ban imports of Russian oil. All of this as fighting intensifies on the eastern front of Ukraine. Its military says that it shot down 3 Russian cruise missiles overnight near Zaporizhia as Ukraine makes another desperate plea to NATO for more weapons. Let's begin with CNN's Nick Robertson on this UN vote to suspend Russia from the Human Rights Council. It is odd that Russia doing what it's doing is even on the Human Rights Council. What are we expecting to happen here, Nick?
And Russia takes pride in having strong positions on all the UN bodies that it can because it sees it as prestige. That's been President Putin's sort of basic position for a long time now. So to be voted down and off that 47-member UN Human Rights Council would be a significant blow to him. Would it change the outcome of the war? Not likely. But it does put Putin and Russia on the path to becoming an international pariah. The Ukrainian foreign minister here in Brussels has urged UN members to vote against Russia. Russia, we understand, has been urging its friends and partners not to abstain because an abstain vote doesn't count. It's a yes or a no vote that counts, and it's a 2/3 majority that will carry the day. So Russia trying desperately to hold on, Ukraine urging members to push Russia off of that prestigious UN Human Rights Council. How can it be on it, as you say, with committing those human rights abuses when on that committee, the UN committee, it is there to uphold and stop the very things it's accused of perpetrating?
Yeah, the U.S. ambassador to the UN said it would undermine the body, and it's hard to see how it wouldn't. Nick Robertson, thank you so much for that live report for us from Brussels. We do appreciate it. And now to Washington, where the Senate just held a vote to revoke normal trade relations with Russia and to ban imports of Russian oil. That is where CNN's Sunlen Serfati is with this story. Sunlen, what does this really do? How significant is this?
Well, it is significant, Brianna. First and foremost, there was certainly a lot of pressure mounting on senators on Capitol Hill to get this done before they would leave for a 2-week Easter recess. The House had passed these 2 bills weeks ago, and they had been scuffling over the details in the Senate. Now, very likely we will see things move quickly this morning. As you see, there's a live picture of the Senate floor where they are first voting to end normal trade relations with Russia. That would revoke Russia's preferential trade status with the United States. That is something that President Biden called for last month, and then they will vote on a second bill. Now, this bill would ban the importing of Russia oil. This would essentially just codify the executive action that the president moved on last month. Now, these are expected to pass in the Senate. They need to be sent back to the House for reapproval, essentially, because the Senate did make changes to these 2 bills, but it is expected that these 2 bills will head to President Biden's desk for his signature later today. And senators saying, look, this is the very least we can do, pass these 2 bills. Months and weeks of haggling over the details, given that Ukrainians, Brianna, as you know, are on the battlefield fighting this every day.
Colonel, I wonder, everything is shifting east now, so much farther away from the border with Poland, where so much comes through in terms of weapons and aid. What is this going to mean logistically for supplying the Ukrainian military?
Well, Brianna, if things hold the way they're holding right now, and that focus to the east stays, which we have every indication that it will, then the supply lines to Poland, from Poland into Ukraine, will actually be fairly secure, or at least not, they won't be affected by Russian efforts to interdict them, at least not as much. So that's going to be, I think, a major factor in being able to replenish the Ukrainian military, and it could help them in their fight in the east.
What does the U.S. and NATO need to do, Kim?
Well, as the Ukrainian foreign minister says weapons, weapons, weapons. And when we hear from the Pentagon, that's exactly what they're trying to do, rush more weapons in there faster. Not some of the sophisticated anti-air defense systems or the jets that Ukraine had asked for, but everything that they say from the U.S. perspective that the Ukrainian military has been using to great effect on the ground, from the drones to the Javelin systems that will help them take out more tanks, more armored vehicles, especially as the fight shifts increasingly to eastern Ukraine. Now, they don't know if it's going to stay there, but that is a wide sort of area of plains, not very much cover, and it will help the Ukrainians to have weapons that they can use from a distance to take out those armored vehicles.
Cedric, we learned overnight the Ukrainians say that they intercepted 3 Russian cruise missiles over Zaporizhia. One of our CNN crews did hear something. It sounded like a plane and then a loud explosion. Can you tell us what you think is happening there? It seems like there have been many times where they've said they've been intercepting missiles, and I'm curious what kind of technology they're using.
Well, that's an interesting question, Brianna, because we don't know everything that the Ukrainians have, but it sounds consistent with something that they would have had if in the S-300 variety. Now, so far we've been told that they haven't gotten any replenishments for their air defense capability from places like Slovakia, but that may not be true anymore, and it may be possible that they have something like an S-300 ready to go and in operation over Zaporizhia or perhaps other areas that could intercept cruise missiles and frankly get a lucky shot every now and then.
It's very interesting. It does make you wonder what they have here on the ground. Kim, the EU's top diplomat says that a 5th round of sanctions on Russia could be agreed to today. But I feel like I could say that sentence. I could say the 13th or the 17th round of sanctions at this point. It seems like besides a total ban on Russian energy imports to Europe, there really isn't something economically that is maybe going to make Vladimir Putin reconsider. Do you see any shift on that?
So not right away. And European officials I've spoken to in the past week have said it's got to be cumulative. Each of these things adds onto the last one, and that the Russian population is eventually going to feel this and understand this is not something that's going to go on for a couple of months. This is something that is for good. It's hard to undo sanctions once you put them on. And this is the most rapid deglobalization of a very sophisticated Russian population that was used to traveling, et cetera. Eventually, the hope is that unrest is going to reach Putin, and he may decide, the east of Ukraine is enough, and he'll ratchet things back. But more officials that I speak to are worried that he'll just take part, pause, regroup, and possibly go after the whole country again.
Yeah, Kim and Cedric, thank you so much to both of you. And Kate, that's really it here in the near term, things shifting over to the east. And you're hearing citizens there who have seen now what has happened in the West, and they are fleeing, some of them very panicked. They see what may be coming their way, and they're taking heed.
Absolutely. We'll get back to you, Brianna, very shortly. We're also watching this, though, right now. Coming up, FBI arresting 2 men accused of impersonating federal agents. And now Secret Service agents have been put on leave. The story behind this, next. Developing at this hour, 2 men are under arrest by the FBI for allegedly impersonating federal agents for more than 2 years. They are accused of a plot to try and gain access to the Secret Service. CNN's Whitney Wild is live in Washington with details on this. And Whitney, there is a lot going on with this story.
Yeah, this indictment is really crazy. And like you said, it goes back 2 years, and it zeroes in on 2 men who, over a period of time, collected enough law enforcement gear to realistically present themselves to other members of law enforcement as DHS agents. In doing so, they were able to basically buddy up with other members of law enforcement who appeared to be all living in the same building. And some of those members of law enforcement that they were able to develop relationships with include members of the Secret Service. For example, Kate, within this indictment, it says that one of these men accused allegedly offered to buy a $2,000 assault rifle for a member of Jill Biden's Secret Service detail. So obviously hugely alarming. Other members of the Uniform Division of the Secret Service, which is the police force that surrounds the White House complex, also named in this indictment as people whom these imposter DHS agents zeroed in on. And really the scheme here, Kate, was to buddy up to these people and then give them these lavish gifts, which included, a year of rent-free apartments. In one case, a year-long rent-free penthouse apartment in downtown Washington, D.C. Not cheap if you're from around here. In addition, this included giving federal law enforcement agents television, surveillance systems, a drone, iPhones, access, in one case, access to a car that they claimed was a government vehicle, and they gave access to that vehicle to somebody's wife. So the scheme is long, it is complicated, but what it highlights, Kate, is that people who are even trained to spot frauds didn't recognize it when it was right in front of them.
Yeah. Whitney, thank you very much for that. Let's turn now to a historic moment in Washington. In just hours, the Senate's poised to confirm Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court. If so, Jackson becomes the first black woman to ever sit on the nation's highest court. CNN's Manu Raju is live on Capitol Hill for us. Manu, how is this going to play out today?
Yeah, just actually in a matter of minutes, the Senate will take its first major step towards getting to that confirmation later this afternoon to break a filibuster. They just need a simple majority to do just that. That's the current rules of the Senate to deal with Supreme Court nominations, and they do have a simple majority. 50 Democrats are all united behind moving forward, as well as 3 Republicans, Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski, but all other Republicans are opposed. So this nomination will first advance in the procedural vote at 53-47 margin. And then at 1:45 this afternoon is when that historic confirmation vote will take place. She will be confirmed on that same 53-47 margin. And then afterwards, she will take her spot on the bench when Stephen Breyer steps aside at the end of this current Supreme Court term, which is expected in June or July, Kate.
And Manu, there's also just breaking news coming in about the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. What are you learning?
Yeah, she just announced that she tested positive for COVID-19, and she was just about to come out and brief the press at her weekly press conference, and that was canceled in the news that she did test positive. Now, she also had a planned trip to Asia next week, an official trip that she was planning to take with other members of Congress. That is no longer taking place. Now, in a statement put out by her spokesperson, she says she's vaccinated, she's fully boosted, and she's asymptomatic, but she will take the proper guidance and isolate as asked for under current guidance. But she was also around a number of members. She was around the president just yesterday at the White House, an official signing ceremony event. They were not wearing masks. Other members of Congress, including the Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, was around her as well. So this comes as amid an outbreak of sorts is happening on Capitol Hill. A number of members in recent days have also announced that they have tested positive. Pelosi being the most prominent of that. She's 82 years old. They say that she's not feeling any symptoms, but she is tested positive here. That's going to put her on the sidelines for some time, but the House is scheduled to go on a recess, a 2-week recess, starting tomorrow. Okay.
Wow. Manu, thank you so much. Joining me now for more on all of this, Cedric Richmond, a senior advisor to President Biden. Cedric, thanks for coming in. Your reaction to this news that we just learned about the Speaker. In addition to the Speaker, there's also been multiple cabinet members who also just have gotten in just the last week.
Well, yes, it's a reminder that we have to take serious precautions. We should stay masked up when we feel it's appropriate and just use common sense. And so, unfortunately, in public service, you're around a number of people and a number of events. And this is one of those unfortunate consequences of it. But it just reminds us that we still have to be really diligent in knowing that COVID-19 is out there and try to contain it. I would also say it's a good reminder of why this White House is still fighting for COVID funds, and we need Congress to act.
And also, good news, at least at this moment, is that the speaker remains asymptomatic, and let's hope it remains that way. Let's talk about the other big news today, let's talk about the Supreme Court and this historic confirmation that will be coming of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. You were directly involved in the president's selection process for this nominee. She got 3 Republican votes the last time her lower court nomination was voted on, and it looks like she will have 3 Republicans to support her again. I'm going to put this graphic up to show everyone at home kind of the current justices, showing how the vote margin, generally speaking, has seriously tightened up over the years as our politics have become more divided. Cedric, how important is the final vote count in the end to you?
Well, it's been our belief from the beginning, especially the president and the vice president, that Judge Jackson deserved bipartisan support. We think that it should have been a very wide margin. She is an outstanding legal scholar, and she's a person of impeccable character. So, but we are happy that there are 3 Republicans, Murkowski, Collins, and Romney, that are going to support her and give her that bipartisan vote that she deserves. So we think it's important. We expected it from the beginning, and the judge worked, and demonstrated how qualified she was, and the reward for that is a bipartisan vote today, in which we're waiting on it.
Yeah, and it very likely will be coming, but you don't count the votes until the last vote is counted, though, as we know on Capitol Hill. So everyone waits. It was, I'll call it a rough road to this point for Judge Jackson in some regard, because for one reason in particular, because of some of the questions that she faced during confirmation hearings. I want to play this for everyone.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Do you agree with this book that is being taught with kids that babies are racist?
I want to try to understand here, is it your view that society is too hard on sex offenders?
So there is that, but you also hold that up against the history that's likely to be made today. Is all of that, what I just played, does all of that fade away after she's confirmed?
Well, I would hope not. I think that it's important for people to see what Black women have fought their entire lives as they have advanced, and even with this historic moment and such a qualified woman, she still had to take the attacks, the mischaracterizations, some flat out lies that have been debunked in order to get to this moment. And she persevered. And so the only thing I can think of is that she channeled her inner ancestors and sat there with poise and dignity, almost as if she was a freedom fighter back in the civil rights movement. But 20 hours of questioning, 1,500 questions submitted to her in writing that she answered. She met with 97 senators. So she worked, and I think that it's right that she demonstrated how qualified she is, how tough she is, how courageous she is, and also how smart she was. And so I think that what the Republicans tried to do didn't work. She came out of the hearing with a greater approval rating than when she went into it. And she has this overwhelming support of about 60% of Americans. But no, I don't think we should forget what she went through. I think what we should focus on, though, is how she went through it, the perseverance and the courage that she showed. And it's going to make this moment that much more historic, that much sweeter. And it's just phenomenal that the president was able to make this commitment, follow through on this commitment. And it symbolizes everything he's done since he's been in office in terms of equity and inclusion.
Also, I do need to ask you about this new reporting that Whitney Wild was just bringing to us about 2 people being arrested for impersonating federal agents, giving a rent-free apartment to a Secret Service agent, even offering to buy an assault rifle for another agent assigned to the First Lady's detail. And 4 Secret Service agents are now on administrative leave over this. Cedric, are you concerned about the safety of the president and the First Lady and about the credibility of some of the agents around them now?
Well, we don't comment on open investigations, and I would refer that to Secret Service. And as far as the president and the First Lady's concerned, the truth of the matter is, in this day and age, we take their security very, very seriously. And, we've been through this for a very long time.
You?
Well, I won't comment on the report. I would just refer that to Secret Service, to the agency, which is charged with protecting the complex, protecting the principles. And I'm sure that they'll have a comment if they can.
Cedric Richmond, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thousands of people have fled eastern Ukraine as fighting there intensifies, and Ukraine is now asking NATO for more weapons to combat the Russian invasion. In the southeast, a Ukrainian commander telling CNN that Russian forces are trying to wipe Mariupol, quote, off the face of the earth. And here in western Ukraine, we heard air sirens multiple times today, a day after the region was targeted by Russian strikes. Joining me now is Deputy Mayor of Lviv, Serhiy Kiral. Mayor, thank you so much for being with us. I do appreciate you being here. Can you just tell us a little bit about, as the focus is shifting to the east, what it is meaning for Lviv?
Well, things in the east are intensifying, as you report, and according to the statements from our military, the Russian forces are trying to focus on Donbass, and that's where the battle is now going quite fierce. We also see that there are more people who are trying to flee that area. So for us here in the West, I guess we have to be prepared, as we have been through all these 40 days, to accept more people who will be displaced, and to be prepared to provide them with everything they need, with accommodation, with food and all the essentials. And the city, together with more than 3,000 actually volunteers who are involved in that operation, we are ready.
Here a couple nights ago, Ukrainian forces say that they intercepted a Russian missile strike. Are you worried about the region being targeted? Why do you think it's being targeted at times when the focus is supposed to be on the east?
It's probably one of the ways of intimidation by the Russian aggressor and Russian forces to create, on one side, to create panic, to see some sort of anxiety among the local population. But on the other hand, to sort of cripple part of the Ukrainian armed forces so that they stay here because of some potential danger, and are not mobilized to fight with the rest of the Ukrainian army where it's really most needed. But it's also is part of that larger debate at the international level of the need for Ukraine to be supplied with the air defense system, because there is not a single city right now in Ukraine which is cannot be targeted by the Russian missiles and rockets. And only with the modern air defense, anti-rocket, anti-missile system in place, the no-fly zone is so-called, we can get rid of that risk. Of course, I mean, we understand that NATO right now doesn't have a unity on that, but let Ukraine do it ourselves. Provide with the weapon we need, and we will do it ourselves.
I think one of the things that strikes so many people is how Ukraine and Ukrainians are living lives that are just like theirs. You know, I think a lot of people in our audience realize that, and I wonder what your message is to them about what you need and what you want them to know about this invasion.
Yeah, but that's a very good question. I think the whole world now have understood that the Ukrainians are really a nation of fighters, that we are ready and we will defend our sovereignty and our state, our people. What we need is all the support we can get, and that means the international community, NATO, US, and EU, in terms of weapons. Our foreign minister today is in Brussels, and to quote him, you know, his message, his agenda actually said weapons, weapons, and weapons. I mean, we need not only defensive weapons right now, but if you want to free our territories, we need really heavy offensive weapons. And the EU has to get together, and also the US, the Biden administration, I think, has to finally stop speculating on this risk of getting too much involvement with Russia, maybe triggering the Third World War. We just need to understand that the time is now. You are either with Ukraine on the right side and you're doing the right thing, or you are weak, and that's how you will be pursued by the history. On the other hand, what we need also is to, in order to end this war and to deprive Russia of the resources to pay for the atrocities, for the army, and for all the bad things they do, and we see right now, is the full embargo on Russian oil and gas, more sanctions, heavier sanctions, and more sanctions on Russian banking system. Right now, it's only 23% of Russian banking system which is cut off the SWIFT.
It's an important point that you make. We keep talking about it. We're hearing it from many Ukrainian officials. And we really appreciate you, Deputy Mayor Kirill. Thank you so much for being with us and talking with us today.
Thank you for reporting.
Thank you. Kate, back to you in New York.
Brianna, thank you so much. Coming up still for us, why is the Justice Department blocking Congress from getting details on some Trump White House records? New reporting next. New this morning, the Justice Department is blocking the National Archives from sharing with Congress details of White House records that President Donald Trump took to Mar-a-Lago after leaving office. CNN's Evan Perez is live in Washington with more details on this. Evan, why is this?
Well, this is now officially a Justice Department investigation, Kate. We know that the Justice Department is investigating whether there was any mishandling of classified information that the National Archives says were among the materials that were found in these 15 boxes that were retrieved from Mar-a-Lago. Now, this is a routine thing that the Justice Department and the FBI would do whenever they find that classified information may have been mishandled or not stored in ways that are required by the federal government. This is routine, but for some reason, until now, the Justice Department has been torturing itself trying to avoid saying that this is an investigation. And that's the reason why Carolyn Maloney, the chairwoman of the Oversight Committee, wrote to Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, saying, why is the archives being prevented from sharing information? They say they're doing a consultation, which is obviously a word that they were trying to use to avoid saying that this is under investigation. But we can now say that this is officially an investigation by the Justice Department to see whether there was any mishandling of classified information there.
Got it. Clearly much more to come. It's good to see Evan. Thank you.
Right now, senators, as you can see, they're voting on a bill that would revoke Russia and Belarus's trade status with the U.S., most favored nation trading status as it's known. They will also vote on banning Russian energy imports. That would codify President Biden's existing executive order.
CNN Chief Congressional Correspondent Manu Raju is on Capitol Hill. Manu, where are we on this vote? It's a day of consequential votes there, really.
Yeah, no question about it. The Senate and the House are racing to finish a number of key issues as they head out into a 2-week recess beginning tomorrow. And this starting right now to nix the trade status of Russia and Belarus. That is going to pass. It's sailing through right now. 51 votes in the affirmative, no votes. And then afterwards, they're going to move to ban Russian energy imports. This has been an issue they have actually been haggling about on the Senate side for weeks, but now they have a deal and they're going to move pass it very quickly. The House will give it final approval sometime today. Now, in between that is going to be the confirmation of the first black woman Supreme Court justice in history. Ketanji Brown Jackson is poised to get confirmed with the 53-47 vote. 3 Republicans, Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, expected to join all Democrats in confirming this nomination later this afternoon. Now, there's been a lot of rhetoric on both sides, particularly among Republican critics who say that she is soft on crime. Earlier this week, Senator Tom Cotton went as far as suggesting that she would have defended the Nazis at Nuremberg. Earlier this morning, I asked Joe Manchin, the West Virginia Democrat, about those remarks. Tom Cotton said that she may have defended the Nazis if she had the chance to do so. What do you think about that?
It's just so disrespectful. It's very shameful, that anyone has to go through that. This woman is very accomplished, very well educated, very well experienced, and she has the right temperament to be on the court. I've made my decisions based on everything I've heard and everything I've read, and we've checked and researched everything we could to make those accusations. It's harmful to this institution. We would go to that position.
So even as the rhetoric has been sharp among some Republicans, it's not going to affect what the ultimate outcome is going to be here. In the next hour, the Democrats are going to, with those 3 Republicans, are going to have enough votes to break a filibuster, and then they're going to move to that final confirmation vote about 1:45 p.m. Eastern, and then Jackson will take her seat on the court once Stephen Breyer officially steps down when the term ends in June or July. Guys,
it's a moment in history. Manu Raju, thanks so much. Well, so far, more than 2.5 million refugees have crossed into Poland from Ukraine since the start of Russia's invasion. In an exclusive interview with CNN, Polish President Andrzej Duda says it is, quote, hard to deny that Russian forces are committing genocide in Ukraine.
It's a fascinating interview. CNN's Anna Bash spoke to the president. She joins us now in Warsaw. So many takeaways from this exclusive interview, Dana. What stood out to you now?
Well, one of the most interesting things is how the Polish government right now is kind of realigning itself and redirecting itself towards the issue of national security. You know this, both of you, Bianna and Jim. It's not as if the security of the Poles has been far from their thoughts or their policies at all, pretty much ever. But right now, especially with this long border between this country, Poland, and Ukraine, even more so, this country, this government just purchased $4.75 billion worth of military equipment, of tanks from the U.S. military. And so I asked about the importance of that when I spoke exclusively to the Polish President Duda.
How worried are you about the conflict in Ukraine spilling into Poland?
In a situation of Russian aggression on Ukraine, the military people call it a full-fledged invasion. I think that under these circumstances, nobody has any doubt that Poland is potentially threatened by a Russian aggression in a future. So because of that, we need to strengthen our defense potential. We are very happy to be members of NATO. Until today, we are grateful to the United States and to the Polish community living in the United States for supporting our aspirations to become members of NATO. There is Article 5. President Joe Biden, now when he was in Warsaw, stressed very strongly in Warsaw, not for the first time, that Article 5 is ironclad and that collective defense is of fundamental importance. I'm very much grateful to the American president for that. It is of huge importance to the Polish people, but we are serious about our defense. We want to defend ourselves. We want NATO. We want the U.S. armed forces also to support us if there is such a need. But first and foremost, we want to be able to defend ourselves. Therefore, we need to increase the size of the Polish armed forces. We need to modernize our armed forces, which is being done. We need to increase defense spending on the Polish armed forces. We declared that we are going to spend 3% of our GDP on defense already next year. We are implementing all of that. And in this process, we are still exchanging the rest of the post-Soviet tanks that we still have on stock in our country. And we want to replace that with state-of-the-art U.S. tanks, Abrams tanks, which we believe are the best in the world right now. And we are delighted that we are going to have these supplies of 250 tanks and that Polish soldiers will be able to use them, defending the territory of NATO, defending the territory of Poland.
I want to ask you about sanctions. The war in Ukraine now has been going on more than 6 weeks. Are these sanctions working?
Of course, sanctions should be stronger, especially given what we were able to see in Bucha. There is a question how to stop that, and the sanctions regime should be strengthened. I have no doubt whatsoever about this. This is, of course, a very complex task. What would be most efficient would be such economic sanctions, which would block Russia the possibility to sell its carbohydrates, first and foremost, oil and gas. First of all, oil, because oil is the basis from which Russia generates most of its income to the budget. Gas, to a lesser extent. Crude oil is of key importance. The problem, however, is that for some countries, well, this is fundamental for them.
The German finance minister said today, at this point, energy sanctions would cause too much harm to Germany's economy.
Well, this is a broader problem to us, the Poles, because right from the start, we were fighting against joint investments by Russia and Germany, investments in Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2. We were opposed to both of those pipelines because to us, they were not so much of economic nature, but they were obviously political projects. Their goal was to circumvent the territory of Poland, to bypass the Baltic countries, to bypass Ukraine, so that Russia could apply gas blackmail against these countries in Central Europe, as it did against Ukraine at the beginning of the 21st century. So we protested against that all the time.
Sounds like you're saying, I told you so, about all of the dependence that Germany in particular built on Russian energy. The word blackmail, you believe that Russia is blackmailing Germany right now?
I think that, as a matter of fact, Russia is blackmailing not only Germany. Right now, Russia is blackmailing, in fact, the entire Europe. The fact that we're saying it is impossible to impose embargo on Russian gas, it is not possible to impose embargo on Russian oil right away, yes, because Russia today is saying additionally, so pay me in rubles for that. Now I demand that you pay me in rubles. Why? Because Russia believes that this is profitable for her, that it's going to raise the value of its currency, that now, amidst all those sanctions, it is going to improve its economic situation. If you're asking me about sanctions, I believe these sanctions are going to be efficient in their majority, but they will bring effects in 6 months' time or longer time. Russian economy will feel them very strongly because we are speaking about delivery of spare parts for the machines in Russia. Russia is a part of the globalized economy in the world.
Part of the globalized economy, and yet this whole notion of the fact that these Western countries, in particular Germany and to a lesser extent France, have been saying absolutely no to extending the sanctions in a more robust way to Russia's energy sector. Obviously, you just heard, Biana and Jim, is something that that the Poles and others in this close region to Russia are saying this is just unacceptable. Because, of course, Poland, where I am, this is a NATO country. They are protected. Biana, you're the country of your birth, Moldova, where you were just a couple of days ago. They are not. So the spillover factor is one thing here. It's another thing for those other countries, especially for Russia, which still gets money from these Western countries for its oil and gas.
Yeah, amounting, according to even some EU officials, to a subsidy for the Russian war, given the amount of money